This is October 7, 2024 at Delray Beach Nooners Treasure in the Traditions Workshop, Tradition 8 with Miss Carrie B. Tradition 8 reads, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional. We define professionalism as the occupation of counseling alcoholics for fees or hire, but we may employ alcoholics where they are going to perform those services for which we might otherwise have to engage non-alcoholics. Such special services may be well recompensed, but our usual AA 12-step work is never to be paid for. Miss Carrie, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Carol. My name is Carrie. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and my home group is the New Horizons group in beautiful Bend, Oregon. We meet Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock noon in downtown Bend. I have a sobriety date of March 25th, 2010. And I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. I sponsor women who sponsor women. And most importantly today, I'm sponsorable, which I haven't always been. So I also have a service sponsor. And not everybody needs a service sponsor unless you're in Third Legacy service, general service. But I've had a service sponsor for quite some time now. And so I've been active in the Upside Down Triangle for most of my sobriety. And so I have a service sponsor, and that's where I learned more about the traditions than just what's in what I figured was the traditions when I was new is in the 12 and 12. But today I know that the 12 traditions are, and thank you, Carol, for reading the long form. That is the tradition, and that is in the 12 and 12. It's in the very back of the 12 and 12. It's also in the back of your big book. It's in the back of the book. It's in a lot of our literature. My favorite place to go for the long form and for the short form both is in the AA group pamphlet, because I really like how that pamphlet, it's like a 50-page owner's manual to any Alcoholics Anonymous group or meeting. Has any questions and answers that you might need to learn how to run your group or your meeting within the 12 traditions and the 12 concepts. Today, the literature that I'm going to be kind of studying out of and referencing for Tradition 8 will be the following. I'm going to use AA Comes of Age. I'm going to use Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. I'm going to use the big book. I'm going to use the 12 and 12, and I'm going to use the 12 traditions illustrated. So those are the pieces of literature I will be referencing today. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the actual tradition and just dissect it. So Alcoholics Anonymous should remain non-professional. Well, what does that mean? What is professionalism? In Alcoholics Anonymous, we actually have a lot of our language is our own language, and we have definitions for things. Like we define sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous, probably different than what you would define if you looked it up in the dictionary or if you asked your neighbor who's not in AA, what is sobriety? For example, the definition of sobriety is freedom from alcohol through the teaching and the practice of the 12 steps. That's how we define sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, we also define professionalism in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is the next line. It says, we define professionalism as the occupation of counseling alcoholics for fee or hire. So the opposite of fees and hire is for fun and for free. And that is where we get that. I don't know if you guys have heard that before, that we in AA do this for free and for fun and for free. That is a reference to Tradition 8. That is the spiritual principle behind Tradition 8 is freely ye have received, freely give, right? I can't give or charge for something that was so freely given to me. And that's really the essence of Tradition 8. So Tradition 8 comes in two parts. That first part that we just read, which is talking about actually working in treatment or working like charging for 12-step calls or charging to take somebody through the work. We don't do any of that. Now, the second part of Tradition 8 continues to say, but we, as in not the treatment industry, we as in AA, may employ alcoholics to perform those services which we might otherwise have to engage non-alcoholics. Such special services may be well recompensed, but our usual AA 12-step work is never to be paid for. So it's in two different parts. So the first part about maybe working in treatment or being a sober coach or owning a sober living house or something like that, that's called a two-hatter. It means that you have two separate jobs depending on where you are. When you are at work, you are just there as an employee. You're not an AA member. And then when you're in your AA home group, you're just there as an AA member. You do not work in treatment, and you never try to wear those two hats at the same time. And so that's why we call those people who work in the industry two-hatters. Now, the second part of this, where we employ people, those are called special workers, the people who work for Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're not hiring them to do 12-step work. We're hiring them to make 12-step work possible. So to do all the work behind the scenes to make our 12-step work possible. I'll give an example. If you guys have a central office, or even in New York, right, at the general service office, we hire people to answer the calls and say, oh, yes, we do have a case of big books available. How many would you like? And when can we have it delivered? Or when can you pick it up, right? And they're not doing the 12-step work with those big books. They're selling it to us so that we can go and take those big books to our home groups and to our sponsees and make that and actually do the 12-step work. So they're doing the stuff behind the curtains that make that 12-step work possible, if that makes sense. I love how simple and how simplistic this 12 Traditions Illustrated. It has a blurb under Tradition 8, and I'm just going to read it real quick, because Bill W., one of our co-founders, he did think, he was offered a job at Towns Hospital, and where he was spending all of his time anyways, and he wasn't making any money doing anything because he was giving all of his time to this 12-step work. And Lois, his poor wife, was at home making dinner and coffee and everything for the drunks that he would bring home at night. And then during the day, she was slaving away at the department store. And so when Charlie Towns, the owner of the Towns Hospital, asked Bill, we've never made this much money. You are bringing in all sorts of business and you're successful where we have failed. Can we put you on the payroll? I mean, you've made us a lot of money. Can we pay you to do this? And Bill thought, oh, this is a great idea, right? And so after he got back to his group and he told his wife, Lois, and the group what he was thinking, and on the subway home, he even heard a voice from God straight out of the Bible that says the laborer is worthy of his hire. But the group conscience took over, and the group conscience said, no, you can't sell this thing. Like, yeah, what you propose is a good idea, I guess, but the good will never work. Aren't you the very person who tells us that the good is sometimes the enemy of the best, and nothing but the best will do? We have to keep this thing spiritual. This has to be an avocation, not a vocation. And so I'm going to read something out of the 12 Traditions Illustrated toward the bottom of the first page. It says, this does not mean, of course, the idea of turning professional never has entered into any AA's minds. In the lean years, Bill W. did think of becoming a therapist to earn money for his experience in helping alcoholics. But with a strong nudge from the group conscience, right? And this might be the very first group conscience, I don't know, ever in AA. It was the first recorded group conscience for sure. And then later it says, it became clear to the early members that no AA should ever ask or accept payment for carrying this message to someone else, person to person and face to face. Everybody always talks about Bill's struggles with the town hospital situation. And it's such a beautiful illustration that I see why that story is told in almost all of our books, right? And the story is told over and over again, whether it's a demonstration of tradition 2 and the group conscience, or tradition 8 and not professionalizing the 12-step work. It's told throughout, but we never hear if Bob had any of that temptation. And there's a spot in Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers that says, and I'm just going to read from page 127, because this did actually almost happen to Dr. Bob as well. But there was a happy ending, just like there was with Bill's group conscience that told him, no, you can't do this. So at the end, at the bottom of page 127, it says, though it never came to pass, it was an idea that was to intrigue Dr. Bob for a few years. His practice was still very poor, and he was already giving most of his time to AA work. His house was mortgaged, and he was in debt. A salaried position in an alcoholic hospital would have offered him a way out of his financial predicament. And it would have been okay because he had the approval of his group in Akron. So unlike Bill's group in New York, Dr. Bob's group gave him the thumbs up. I know we are going to I know we got into it about money. LGR, John's wife, said, recalling a conversation in the late 1930s when Doc was talking about charging for his services to alcoholics. You can't do that, I said. Why not? These people have been conned all over. You put money into it and it'll never work. It's a God-given program. And if you put money into it, you're through. Then there was a time somebody wanted to give them a house or something, LG recalled. I couldn't figure it out. So I said no. Temptation rarely comes only once, to be vanished and to disappear. Whether the attraction is that of money or alcohol, it's likely to surface again and again over the years. Still, there is no evidence to be found either on or off the record that Dr. Bob ever charged 1 cent for his work with alcoholics. Every member interviewed was asked a direct question on this matter, and each replied that there was no charge whatsoever for Dr. Bob's services. Even the physical examinations necessary for admittance to some hospitals was provided by another doctor on staff. And that is miraculous. It's amazing that they foresaw that that would ruin this thing so early on. I do have a couple of examples of this. There was the example where we used to have a guy come in and he used to bring his clients in. I don't know if this guy was a sober coach or a drug and alcohol counselor or whatever, but at my home group, he would bring some clients in, sit them in the front row, sit in the back row himself, keep quiet. He didn't share. He didn't participate. He didn't put his name on the phone list. He didn't contribute to the 7th tradition. He didn't do any of our readings. He was there as a professional. And the only reason I even know that he was also in recovery was from later on and from a whole different angle. He never broke his anonymity at our group when he was there on the clock or as a professional. And then afterward, and this is where the 2 hats come in, I can see him taking his clients back to the treatment center or wherever, right? Wherever he's dropping them off for the day, punching out. I see those old time cards, that's what I see in my head, and him taking his hat off, his work hat off, and grabbing his AA hat on and putting his AA hat on and going to his home group, right? And at his home group, he would never bring his clients there because that's where he comes to recover. That's where he does service for fun and for free. That's where he does sponsors and does 12-step work himself, but not in front of his clients, not for work. And so that's how you could probably envision wearing those 2 hats separately and appropriately. I'm going to read from the big book next, from page 19. It says, at the very top of the page, it says, none of us make a sole vocation of this work. Now, I looked up the word vocation, and it means career or occupation. Okay, so it says none of us make a career or occupation of this work. Nor do we think, and the opposite of a vocation is an avocation. And it's all over our literature that this thing is an avocation, right? It's something that we do for fun and for free, the opposite of for fee or for hire. Nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel that elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, which is not anything to do with recovery, and affairs. All of us spend much of this sort of time and effort, which we are going to describe. A few are so fortunate enough to be so situated that they can give, not sell, give nearly all their time to the work. That's like me. I give a lot of time to Alcoholics Anonymous and service in Alcoholics Anonymous, but never once have I ever taken a penny for 12-step work. And I do remember one time I was the CTF chair for District 5 for 2 years, which is the treatment chair. And I oversaw about 14 panels around Central Oregon. And at the end of my 2-year term, I got to know some of the counselors pretty well. They got used to me. I got used to them. And I get a call. I had already rotated out and I had already sent them the contact information for Kurt, the guy that was rotating in after me. And I got a call from this treatment center in a neighboring town. And they wanted me to come in. And I'm thinking, oh, they probably want to buy me flowers. I'm patting myself on the back. You know, they probably want to tell me thank you for my service and what a great job I did, right? Because my ego. And I get in there and they bring me into this little room. And it's an office that I had never been in before. It's not where we did the panels. And there were 2 of them. There was a man and a woman. And the man, I guess, was in charge of the treatment center. And the woman came in and closed the door behind us. And they started talking. And before I knew it, it was an out-of-body experience. They were offering me a job. They didn't want me to stop, doing what I was doing with the panels and such not and whatnot. So they were offering me a job. And by the time I realized this, like they were already on to the benefits that they could offer me. And I was just like, I was hearing like womp, womp, womp. I mean, I got really flushed. I got really hot. I didn't know what to do. And the only thing that came out of my mouth, mind you, this is before I found acquired a little bit of balance since then with these traditions and with these spiritual principles. But the only thing that could come out of my mouth at that time, being caught off guard, and I did make an amends, was I would sell my body before I sell my sobriety. Thank you very much. And I'm sure I offended at least one of them. I'm sure was in recovery themselves. So I wasn't thinking that at the time. I was shaking. I went out to my car. And at the time, this would have been really easy for me to do because I was going through a divorce. I was going to be a single mom. What they were offering me wasn't bad money. And I recoiled as if from a hot flame because something inside of me told me this is for fun and for free. And so I got out to my car. I was still very shaky. I couldn't drive. I called my sponsor. I called my service sponsor. I called until somebody answered. I did make my amends. And I do realize today that it's possible, not for someone like me. I am AA all day. I am AA every day, all day. I can't take my hat off, but I'm sure that there are people out there that can do it appropriately, right? I was on a workshop once where Craig W. was giving a Tradition 8 talk, and it was like an hour-long Tradition 8 workshop. And one of the questions at the end in the Q&A was, have you ever seen this done appropriately? And Craig said, I got to be honest. No. And his service sponsor was in the room. I happened to share a service sponsor with Craig. And my service sponsor never raises his hand. He never contributes. He never participates unless he's asked. And all of a sudden his hand went up. My service sponsor's hand went up, and he said, I have to butt in here. He goes, the reason that you've never seen this done appropriately is because when it's being done appropriately, we don't see it. We don't see it being done. So there's a line in the 12 and 12 that says the same thing. It says the violation, and this is on page 170 of your old 12 and 12, unless you have a new one. The bottom of the page on 170, about 4 lines up from the bottom of the page, it says the violation in these instances was not professionalism at all. It was breaking anonymity. So if someone is at work and they're also an AA member and they're not breaking their own anonymity and telling clients that they're an AA member, then you wouldn't see it being done. And if someone's in their home group and they're not bringing clients in and they're not talking about their work or what they do for a profession, then you're not seeing it being done. And so the way to do this is to employ the spirit of anonymity. And if you really can hold that spirit of anonymity, this can be done, right? I see Jenna in the room, and, Jenna came in she was homeless for 6 years living on the street. And she came into the Bethlehem Inn homeless shelter. And that was her first AA meeting in her sobriety. And she became I was there that night. And my husband's home group was that group. And one of the things that I really appreciate about that group, and Jenna eventually joined that group, and so their home group was held at a homeless shelter. And one of the things that I really appreciate there is I knew the general manager of that homeless shelter, the facility, the big boss, right, of the homeless shelter. I knew her from AA meetings. I didn't break her anonymity when we were there, but it was easy not to break her anonymity when we were having meetings there, because never once did she even peek her head into the door, because we were holding an AA meeting there, and that was her place of work. And so she's not going to participate there. And instead, her home group is all the way across town at 7 a.m., where people who live in a homeless shelter probably wouldn't be able to get to at 7 a.m. without a car. And that's where she participates as an AA member. And that is seeing it done well. But like Jenna said a couple of weeks ago when she was here, Jenna never knew that she was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's because she never broke her anonymity when she was at work. And when she was at her AA meetings, she never brought clients. She went to meetings far away from where the clients would ever show up. And so that is wearing 2 hats appropriately. I'm going to read next from the book AA Comes of Age, which is my very favorite place to go to for all the traditions, actually. But tradition 8 is really thorough in here. So let's see if I can find it. Hang on a sec. There's tradition 11. I'm coming close. Tradition 8. Here we go. Okay. And it breaks it up into 2 parts, just like the long form of the tradition. So tradition 8 says that Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional. Oh, and I'm reading from page 114 of Comes of Age. But our service centers may employ special workers. So Alcoholics Anonymous will never have a professional therapeutic class. We've gained some understanding of the ancient words, freely you have received, freely give. For our purpose, we have discovered that at the point of professionalism, money and spirituality do not mix. I say not like that because it's in italics. We do not decry professionalism in other fields, but we accept the sober fact that it does not work for us. Every time we have tried to professionalize our 12-step, the results have been exactly the same. Our single purpose has been defeated because now money is involved. You remember how I was told by AA's group conscience that I couldn't go to work for Charlie Towns as a professional therapist? And that was right. Early in the game, we discovered that under no conditions should an AA be paid for taking or carrying this message to someone else, person to person and face to face. That was out. If professionalism ever invaded us at that level, we were doomed. And now it's going to talk about the other aspects of professionalism where we in AA, our service centers, have to employ people to do our administrative work and our cleaning and stuff like that. But the issue of professionalism had other aspects. For years, we were trying to figure out at what in AA was professionalism and what was not. The problem arose out of the need for paid workers in our service centers, the need for people who would do the jobs that volunteers could not or would not do. Were service workers professionals or were they not? That was the issue. And of course, it goes on to this story. I really appreciate and encourage anybody to read the story. It starts on page 115 of AA Comes of Age of Tom the Fireman. It's a great story, and it goes in a little deeper of how we came to the conclusion of where the line between professionalism is and not. But yeah, this is a great tradition. I always hear about Bill Wilson, and so I thought it would be fun to bring Dr. Bob's experience into tonight. And I'm going to turn the floor back over to you guys. I think that was 25 minutes. Thank you.